Humans never asked to be feared. They never wanted to be legends or myths or monsters whispered about in the dark corners of the galaxy. But when they were pushed, when their backs were against the wall, humanity had a habit of reminding everyone why you never ever corner a species that clawed its way to the top of a death world. This story begins on a quiet frontier moon, a forgotten speck of dust called Ethel. It was a place where nothing ever happened, a place so ordinary that even the stars seemed to look the other way. And on that moon lived a girl named Rourke Ellison. Her life was simple, filled with the small joys of friendship and the predictable rhythm of daily chores. It was a life of peace. Until the day the universe decided to break it. Mara was walking home with her friend laughing about something utterly meaningless when the ground trembled. A shadow fell over them, vast and suffocating. It was a Draxian, a towering four-armed soldier from an empire that collected weaker species like trophies. He lunged, his massive hand closing around Mara's arm. She cried out, struggling against his grip. He squeezed, and with a sickening crack, her bones snapped. Her scream was a razor blade slicing through the quiet air of the village, but there was no one to answer it. No soldiers, no defenses, no heroes. Just a cold, automated message broadcasting across the settlement. A declaration of surrender from a world she didn't even know was at war. Earth is to comply, your children will serve the Dominion. The Draxians had made their move. They had taken a child. They had broken her. And in their arrogance, they had made a catastrophic mistake because they didn't know that Mara had a brother, and his name was Rourke Ellison. To the galaxy, Rourke was a nobody, a simple mechanic who spent his days with grease on his hands and the quiet hum of machinery in his ears. He was a ghost, a background character in the grand galactic drama. But when he heard the comm transmission, when he heard his sister's voice, broken and whimpering through the static, something inside him didn't just break, it ignited. This wasn't the hot, blinding rage of an angry man. It was something colder, something far more terrifying. It was the focused, absolute certainty of a predator. His hands, usually so steady with tools and wiring, moved with a different kind of purpose. He made a single call to an old friend, a woman known only by her call sign. Nira, a former recon operative, a shadow with a razor-sharp tongue and a loyalty that ran deeper than blood. He didn't have to explain. He didn't have to plead. Her voice came through the comm, low and dangerous. Send me the coordinates. A pause. If someone hurt Mara, they don't get to breathe much longer. The Draxians had built a fortress on the moon. They called it the Argent Spire, a vertical monolith of black metal that tore at the sky. It wasn't just a base, it was a statement. A monument to their power, a warning to any who might dare to resist. It was a promise of absolute dominance. Rourke and Nira didn't care. They landed their small, unmarked ship in the dead of night, their approach as silent as falling ash. Two humans. Two nobodies, against an imperial fortress that had stood as the vanguard for the conquest of dozens of worlds. What happened next would become the subject of hushed debates in cantinas and war rooms across the galaxy. Some would say Rourke moved through the spire like a phantom, a whisper of death that left only bodies in his wake. Others would claim Nira dismantled an entire battalion with nothing more than a combat knife in her incandescent rage. The official Draxian reports, the ones that were eventually leaked, described it as an incursion by an entire Black Ops team, a surgical strike of impossible precision. The truth was worse. Much worse. It wasn't a military operation. It was an extermination. They didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like vengeance given form. The Draxian Warlord in charge of the system, a 6-meter-tall behemoth clad in ceremonial power armor, sat on his throne. He had been told of a disturbance, a minor security breach. He was unconcerned. No single human, no small team could possibly reach him here, in the heart of his power. He laughed at the thought, a deep, rumbling sound of utter contempt. His laughter was cut short when the heavy doors to his throne room were kicked open. Rourke Ellison stood there, covered in dust and something darker. He wasn't armed, not with any visible weapon. The Warlord's amusement turned to curiosity. "You are brave, little human," the Warlord boomed, "or simply foolish." Rourke said nothing. He simply reached into a sack at his side and threw something that skittered across the polished floor, coming to a stop at the Warlord's feet. They were the shattered, scorched armor plates of the elite guards who had been stationed in the hallway. Every single one of them. The Warlord's laughter died in his throat. The fight was not a duel. It was a lesson. A brutal, violent lesson in what a human is capable of when their family is on the line. When the dust settled, a heavy thud echoed in the sudden silence of the chamber. The Warlord's massive horned head hit the floor and rolled. Rourke didn't leave quietly. He wasn't there just to save his sister. He was there to send a message. He walked to the Warlord's command console, the system still blinking and active, and keyed into the fortress's primary comms array. He boosted the signal, routing it through the entire Draxian sector network. And then he spoke. His voice was calm, devoid of emotion, which made it all the more chilling. "Earth does not kneel. You touched our family, now we're coming for yours." That was it. He cut the transmission. Across 5 star systems, on warships and colony worlds and military outposts, the Draxian Dominion fell silent. They had conquered races with superior technology. They had broken armies with overwhelming numbers. They had inspired dread and terror for centuries. But this was different. For the first time in generations, they felt a primal, gut-wrenching fear. Not of Earth's fleet, not of its armies, but of its people. Of one man. Back on Ethel, Mara recovered. Her arm would heal, but the scar would always be there. A silver line on her skin, a physical reminder of the day the galaxy tried to break her. She remembered the pain, the terror. But more than anything, she remembered the moment her brother, his mission complete, had gently lifted her into his arms. His voice had been a low whisper meant only for her. "Nobody hurts you and walks away from it. Not while I'm breathing." Nira stayed with the family for a while. Officially, she was there to ensure Mara's protection. Unofficially, she knew Rourke wasn't finished. The fire in his eyes hadn't gone out. It had only just begun to burn. Weeks later, the official government of Earth issued a statement. It was broadcast on all channels, translated into thousands of languages. It wasn't a declaration of war. It wasn't a threat. It was a funeral announcement written in advance. Any species that endorses, supports, or participates in the enslavement of humankind will face consequences that their planets will not survive. And somewhere deep in Dominion space, on a world trembling on the brink of civil war, a group of high-ranking officials watched the recording from the Argent Spire over and over. They watched the human mechanic. They watched the Warlord's head roll through the dust, and one of them finally whispered the truth that was dawning across their entire empire. Never provoke a human with nothing left to lose. because the galaxy had gotten it wrong all this time. Humans were never its weakest species. They were simply the only ones who had been merciful enough to pretend they were. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit that subscribe button and follow us for more